Good evening, one and all, and welcome to the Wednesday Night Live. Welcome. Come on down, pull up a chair. Let's get talking, let's get chatting. Good evening, Mike. It's rainy and gloomy, just like a country. Let's chat indeed. Like I say, pull up a chair, say hello in chat, and well, sit on down for a pretty good time. Like I say, this evening, we've got a very special guest. Emerald, good evening. Hello to you. Like I say, this evening we've got a very special guest. We've got a Lindt Chocolate Bunny joining us this evening, along with today's chat. So I'm sure from time to time you will see the glorious, this glorious chocolatiness be devoured today in front of you. But I make no apologies. I make no apologies. Bakura, cutting into your anime time. Well, what anime comes out on Wednesday? Nothing's out on a Wednesday. At least nothing good. Oh, what a huge chocolate indeed. It is, Emerald. But that's just, Thornton's bunnies. Jean-Luc Picard, hello to you. Oh, hang on. There we go. Let's try and crack this open with some semblance. Although I do forget I should be ASMRing this. Anyway, there we go. There we are, and it's all its glory. Mithril, hello to you as well. So, what have we got lined up for you this evening? Well, first of all, we're going to go over to Conservative Home, and we're going to have a look at what is so bizarre. It's such a bizarre argument this person is making, because according to this person, as we'll find out in a bit, this person wants the Conservatives to change the laws governing the BBC, essentially to make it pro-Conservatives before the Conservatives lose power, so that the BBC will be a pro-Conservative establishment during the Labour government. I kid you not, that is an actual argument this person is about to make. It's pretty hilarious, to be honest. And then we'll be talking about the next general election. They're going to be talking about a little Sky video that was done yesterday about voters, especially in a Conservative heartland. So that will be quite interesting to see what they've got to say about that and what they think of Rishi Sunak. It's quite surprising, and more importantly, this is like the Conservative voter base, and we've been saying it for quite a while now. The Conservative voter base, most of it is turning off from the actual Conservative Party, and more importantly, not turning out to vote, which for the next general election, or not only just the next general election, but the local elections, could prove pretty interesting to see results-wise how that is going to affect it. And then we've got a piece, an opinion piece from The Guardian, who wrote it, from Raphael Burr. And he's talking about sort of coalition, because he thinks that there is going to be a coalition, that the next government will be of one coalition. I've said before, that is highly likely. I think that is highly probable. There would potentially be a potential coalition. I think it depends on how the next general election goes. And I said before, general elections can be unpredictable, messy, and you never know what could ever happen. Like I say, ask Theresa May what happened at her 2017 snap general election. It went pretty wild for her. And, well, she lost the Conservative majority completely. So, hey, general elections, mad things sometimes. But as always, guys and gals, thank you very much for joining me today. As always, it's fantastic to see you all. like I say, do put your hellos in chat. Like I say, I will try and sort of keep up with you, sort of when I can, and pop over and see what you're saying as well. So, yeah. Um, but definitely interesting times ahead for like I say this evening, and I hope we can have some fun and games together and laugh at some uh, hilarity, I suppose, in terms of what's being presented to us. But yeah. What's this? Tilly, good evening to you. Sunak has got a scandal looming with his wife investment into Kuro Child UK, which means she will be benefit from the budgeting childcare policy. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. Although, to be honest, when you look at that childcare policy, it seems to be incredibly poorly thought out. I haven't seen a single person saying that the policy that the Conservatives, or at least that Jeremy Hunt put forward at the budget, is going to be actually any good. Mithril, state-directed media, sounds a little autocratic to me. Yep, it does. Yeah, Bakura, as if the Conservatives don't have enough media cheerleaders. Exactly. Colin Thompson, greetings to you. Condolences on the loss of Paul O'Grady. Yes, that was someone else we lost this morning. We woke up to that news as well, Paul O'Grady. Probably one of, I'd say certainly watching sort of like the early 90s, very much I think he came to prominence with his act Lily Savage that he obviously sort of used to portray, and then he went on to producing on ITV for quite some time on their daytime show on the Paul O'Grady Show, and then I think he ended up with a show on BBC Radio. I think it was BBC Two, but he's been around probably in the entertainment sector for quite a while. But I think he was only I think he was quite young, to be honest. I think he was only quite young. Let me just check. Yeah, he's only 67. So, to be honest, that's relatively young, really. Well, I say young. I know some people probably disagree and probably say that 67 is relatively old, but normally when we hear a performer, they normally die a lot later. But that's sort of quite young, really. Sort of 67. Normally, when you hear about sort of famous stars dying, they are normally a lot older than that. So, yeah, like I say, I think there'll be a lot of sort of sad people because he was quite a popular entertainer in the UK. So Larry the Cat. Yeah, Maybot was a really crap campaigner, though. Very true. We're probably about to see the same with that of Rishi Sunak. That's for certain. I think Rishi Sunak's campaigning for a general election is going to be very sort of robotic as well. NF, what 8 minutes? Cathlo G, good evening to you. Pretty Bird, greetings to you as well. Annie, Alex letter Alex 1. Yep. Rest in peace, Paul. Till the code, it's undecided. It's undeclared too. BTW. Maybe investigated by his ethics advisor. Oh, that'll be interesting. 67 is not that old in Western countries. Yeah, very true. Yeah, exactly. This is it. And we again, like I said, I don't get involved in any of the culture war stuff because, as I said, I think it's pointless. To be honest, I think it's a massive distraction from, to be honest, the real issues, and it is deployed by the right for that exact reason. But yeah, I remember the whole, like I say, Lily Savage was on the television quite a while. I think, what was it, Blankety Blank? That was the big thing that they used to present. Yeah, there's yeah, like I say, Lily Savage was all over the place, and that was a sort of a big sort of drag performance that that he did. And you wonder why that all that stuff sort of hasn't really come over here yet. But anyway. So let's get on to this because this is fun. But before we do that, I'm sorry. Violence upon the bunny. Mm. 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 So I've never heard of this person before. I've never heard of Poppy Coleman before. But apparently, according to Conservative Home, she's a journalist. Like I say, never heard of her before. She might be quite prominent. I don't know. But the page number, yeah, the bunny hat murderer. But yeah, this is a really strange article, and the ending point, at least the crux of this article, is just so strange because this person is going to make the argument to you that the BBC should essentially become a state-funded version of Fox News, pretty much. So let's get into let's get into this then, shall we? So, cronyism is rife in British politics. Interesting for a conservative, or at least we think a conservative, to make on this on Conservative Home. Of course, especially in the light of the led by Donkey sting. So the normally impartial public bodies have been stuffed with propagandists keen to push the limits of discourse against the wishes of the Democratic majority. Well-meaning reformers face relentless shadow briefing campaigns against them. The law is unjustly wielded by one side against another to foster a culture war division and strife. Now, can you guess if I'm describing the tactics of the left or right? Oh, Daily Blaze, good evening to you. Yes, we are doing very well. But like I say, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, this is an odd one. This is a really odd one because right from the word go, I would say none of these. You're accusing people of being propagandists, but as of yet, you've got to really establish what these people are pushing is propaganda. So I will hope that she will be able to substantiate that these people, well, are pushing propaganda, because at the moment I really don't see that. I really don't see that. So let's continue with this. So if you've been paying attention to the news of the past few weeks, the culprit might appear to be obvious. Keir Starmer leapt to so that she can all instantly accusing Labour of trying to do this. That's interesting. Trying to accuse that Labour somehow has power over this. Okay, we'll see where this goes. Keir Starmer leapt upon the latest BBC impartiality row over the Gary Lineker tweets, comparing the government's asylum policy to Nazi Germany, to bash Rishi Sunak. And the Conservative Party was, quote, attempting to cancel the broadcaster. And according to the Labour leader, the Prime Minister ought to take some responsibility and stand up to his snowflake MPs. I'd agree. You know, as we've said before, Rishi Sunak has no spine whatsoever. So if you have someone like this, and certainly she's now trying to make the case that somehow Labour have this big power on these public bodies, but I want to remind Poppy here that who's in power? It's not Labour. It's not Labour. Labour are not in power. What power do they have compared to Rishi Sunak, who is the Prime Minister and head of the Conservative Party, the party who is the current government, who has more of a say and control over what to do on the BBC? Tell me who has more power and influence over the BBC, Labour or the Conservatives at the moment in time? This is see straight away. The premise of this is way off, way off. Yeah, that's very true. Rishi's a very tiny person, so little. If any spine is actually needed, it just needs a good child booster seat. That's very true. That's very true. Oh, so where were we? So this attempt was to quote reverse cancel culture, a lingo to attack the right. With intelligent struck a chord with many of the self-described sensibles. The Lineker debacle was certainly a fractious time, a ferocious time for the Labour to launch its own review panel for the broadcaster to secure independence. And by the way, that is a good idea. That is something that will be good. Um, I'm actually for that review so that the BBC can remain independent. I think Labour pushing that and that being a Labour policy that we're going to have a review to make sure that the BBC always does remain and keep its independence is something that we should strive for. Now, I have said before, I am very pro BBC. It is a massive employer when it comes to the creative industries in the UK, in TV and radio. And people forget that because the BBC, if this were to be privatized, first of all, the amount of jobs that the BBC currently provides all over the UK, those would be cut massively. Absolutely massively. There is no doubt in my mind that the current BBC staff numbers would be slashed. Not only that, what about the BBC's local radio output? People forget this, that the BBC is a massive local radio output. Do you think all those local radio stations are going to survive? No, absolutely not. They will probably go, or at least sold off again. And one of the things we've always got to mention is how influential the BBC really is on our landscape. It's a very trusted media source, not only in the UK but people outside the UK as well. The BBC has the World Service as well, so that would be up for sale as well. It would be a massive monumental loss. It would be a massive monumental loss if we lost the BBC. So always be very careful when you see people talking about like ending the license fee or making the BBC private, because half the time they've got their own agenda. Really, they really do. And they always try to sort of make it appear as if it's this grassroots campaign to sort of end the license fee when it's not. Half the time, it ends up being fully funded, these campaigns, by the Taxpayers Alliance, which is a very shadowy group. And again, we do not know who funds the Taxpayers Alliance. So bear that in mind the next time you see one of these people on Twitter or a campaign saying that we need to defund the BBC or we need to end the license fee. more than probably not, there will be some right-wing group behind it trying to defund it so that they can then sort of buy it and essentially, well, add it to the big right-wing media sphere, because we are massively, massively overfaced in the UK, massively overfaced with right-wing media, hugely. So Kura, my mum used to work for the BBC as a production assistant on programs like Blue Peter, Jack and Nora, and The Young Ones. Now she watches Jimmy News. And she thinks the whole, I think it's woke and left wing. Again, this is the thing about the BBC, because you will see people on the left wing say the BBC is right wing, and then you've got people on the right wing who will say, "Oh no, you don't understand. The BBC's got this big left wing bias." So the BBC, no matter what it ever seems to do, is damned if it does, damned if it doesn't. Now, does the BBC have problems? Absolutely. I think we can all immediately point to the whole Farage question time debacle, where Farage is like historically one of the most booked guests for BBC Question Time. So make no mistake, the BBC does have problems, and I think this review into sort of securing its independence, I think that will go a long way to help alleviate some of those problems. But this is one of those things where it's been a long time coming, a real long time coming. So back to it. So the Shadow Secretary of State for Culture, Lucy Powell, who is leading the party's review, has made some interesting staffing choices. So Steve Morrison, described as a former Granada TV director of programs, and he's known for founding the third world first program, now known as People and Planet. Here's the thing: if you are going to take on an advisor, because this is what this is what they've done. They've taken on an advisor. If you're going to take on an advisor, who are you going to take on? You're going to take people on who have an experience in the broadcasting industry. So they're either going to be from the BBC, from Granada, which is ITV, probably Channel 4, maybe Channel 5. You're going to see them come from that background. So I don't understand why she has a problem with, the Shadow Secretary of Culture taking on someone to help with that review. Just what? Duke Vengeance. Sorry, I'm late. I was having a nap. Well, excellent. Wake up. we're having a good look at this Conservative post about, as we will see soon, wanting to make the BBC a state-run British funded version of Fox News, because there's going to be a long potential, as she will say herself in a moment, there's going to be a long Labour government. Yeah, exactly. Of all the Labour shadow cabinet, you choose to call out Lucy Powell. This is it. She's trying to make a point here, and I don't think this is really going well. This is not really, I think, a very well put together article, or at least an argument that has a sensible point to make. David Walker, good evening to you. So where is he? So the group runs People on Planet. The group runs such campaigns as Diversity Borders, which aims to build a world free from borders. Oh my God, such a terrible thing to do. Oh no. June Sarpong. Sarpong is also on the panel and has had previously found employment as the BBC's first director of creative diversity. She's written books entitled "The Power of Privilege: How White People Can Challenge Racism and can challenge racism and diversify." An award-winning guide to why inclusion is better for everyone, and also on the board of Britain Stronger in Europe. So far, so impartial. Then who? Pardon me. Who should they be getting then? Who would be so impartial as to be able to do this review? we see this all the time when we see this about advisors. Oh, that person isn't impartial. Well, who do you mean? Name someone who do you think should be on this impartial panel? Because it seems to me everyone that she's named so far has an experience in media and running, you know, very big broadcasting companies, which, to be honest, is probably the experience you want. So it's generally accepted that organizations, pardon me, like the BBC, tend to be staffed by those with a left-wing outlook on life. That's probably true. Most creative people do tend to be left-wing. That is a general fact. Strange how that tends to be the case most of the time. Jane Ganesh of the Financial Times has blamed those of a conservative temperament for chasing money in the city rather than entertaining the poorly paid, rather than entering the poorly paid public sector. So, if people don't want to enter into the public sector because it's so poorly paid, why not, as you know, your party's in government, why don't you increase the pay for the public sector? Is this, yeah. They do the same in Canada. The right is always whining about our CBC here. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. This is a regular tactic. Oh, this is a regular tactic that you see from right wing organizations because that thing is too biased, especially from online right media types. You wouldn't be surprised to know that because they're trying to convince you that they need to get on there, that they need to be allowed to get on there. But half the time, the BBC knows about them, does invite them on, and they either say no or they don't let them on because, well, they're probably a little bit too extreme. They're probably a bit, too right over there. Oh. So, but this analysis is completely out of step with the clout many of these institutions wield. Oh, okay. So now seems to be making the case that the clout that these people these wield is also different to also should be wrong because they wield a lot of power through these institutions. So Lineker, whilst clearly not representative of the average Beeb reporter with his 2 million salary, nevertheless has enough influence to frustrate the wishes of of even Richard Sharp and Robbie Gibb, two appointees with a conservative record, given state sector roles, who are constantly named as examples of aforementioned Tory cronyism. Yes, Richard Sharp donated vast sums of money to the Conservative Party and then got his seat. Well, what do they think? What do they think these people do? And bear in mind, where's her version of this? And bear in mind, Gary Lineker is a presenter. Richard Sharp is the guy who's meant to be running the BBC. Exactly. The horror of public broadcasting stations. Exactly. How dare they? How dare they do this? But trust me, it gets even more crazier. That's for sure. Besides, even the BBC has another body to answer to, Ofcom. It's not just the BBC that answers to Ofcom. It's every single public broadcaster, radio broadcaster in the country answers to Ofcom. They are the Broadcasting Standards Regulator Agency. That is what they are there for, and they existed long before Ofcom. I think they had a name before they became Ofcom. I think there was something else, and then they became Ofcom. And I think it was sort of a merger of a couple of different things as well. I think it was also radio. I think the TV and radio sections merged together, from what I remember. But they are pretty much responsible for broadcasting standards and regulations, not only for just the BBC, but every single broadcaster who broadcasts in the UK is sort of first and foremost responsible to Ofcom. You have to answer to them. They're the ones who set the rules. BBC, it's not just the BBC having to answer to them. The Quango that David Cameron once promised to dismantle all the way back in 2000. What? Yep. Do you know why David Cameron didn't dismantle Ofcom? Because, first of all, it's not a Quango. It is a public body regulator that is responsible for the regulations of basically all live broadcasting in the UK. And when David Cameron realized that getting rid of that meant that, he now might actually have to set up a public body, a government public regulated body to replace Ofcom with, he didn't go ahead with it. But yeah, honestly, getting rid of Ofcom was just, yeah. Yeah, you are right. This is something else I was actually going to bring up as well. You are right. Ofcom doesn't have a lot of teeth. The only power Ofcom really has is the power to fine someone. That is essentially it. Ofcom can only really fine, and it's not an individual. It often tends to be the, it would be the BBC, or it would be the Channel 4. It would be the organization, not so an individual. And it has been, and it was set up that way to do that, because conservatives felt at the time that it was wrong that a organization like Ofcom could find an individual. They felt that the organization should be more at fault. just, just let that sink in for you. Just let that sink in. And yeah, I agree. We've seen the whole thing with, as you said it as well, Tory MPs allowed to interview each other. Yeah, Ofcom doesn't have any power to do that. It can say that is wrong, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that. But they haven't really got any teeth, and unfortunately, it was by design that they were created to do that. So way back in 2009, the issue of bias is far too complex to be reduced to a handful of partisan appointees. Yeah. It's just so complex. We don't have time to go into it all. I'm only writing an article about how the BBC is so, in reality, left-wing bias, and how it's being used and abused by the left wing in order to punish conservatives. Did you write the wrong article? Did you write the wrong article? Oh. So the BBC isn't the only body organising against perceived governmental meddling. Just look at the work being done by Shella Mackenzie at the Michelle Mackenzie Foundation, which has spearheaded the creation of the Charity Reform Group. Again, never heard of them before. Notable members include Himela Begum of the Runnymede Trust, Tim Knott, Hamilton of Refugee Action, who were both outspoken critics of the Conservative Party. The CRG isn't content to just, quote, wait for the doors to reopen, presumably after the current government gets a drubbing in the polls, but has exonerated charity CEOs who wade into political debates with confidence. Again, not 100% if you're familiar with this, but again, why is it wrong for those people to be on a board? Just because they're outspoken critics of the Conservative Party doesn't necessarily disbar them from standing on that board. What? So attempts to try and reform the charity sector have come to nothing. If the attempts to reform the charity sector have come to nothing, why are you complaining about them? If they've been so unsuccessful and you clearly don't like them, is that not a good thing? Question mark. Just so, despite the appointment of various Conservative figures, the party has shown no interest in repealing the Charities Act in 2011, which is explicitly biased towards left-leaning organizations operating under the protection of the Promotion of Equalities Clause. Oh no. We can't punish them because they're operating under the Equalities Clause. How dare they? How dare they operate under the Equalities Clause? Grr, those pesky charities criticizing the Tory government. How dare they operate under the Equalities Clause? Yeah. Oh heavens, equality. Exactly. Exactly. You can see where this piece is going, even though this person said that right at the beginning that culture wars are divisive. What are you attempting doing, Poppy? What are you attempting doing here in this article? So the fundamental significance of that repealing this act is obvious when observing the disastrous Charity Commission investigation into the Runnymede Trust back in 2021, after over a dozen Conservative MPs wrote to complain about the Trust's criticisms of the Sizewell report. Of the Siswell report. Charities are allowed to do that. You're complaining that charities had something to say about that report, and then Conservative MPs got a bit uppity that they were complaining about the criticism of the report. I don't see any problem with that. I do not see any problems with that. So the complaint was thrown out by the commission. Never mind that the trust director, Halima Begum, described the government as pursuing a, quote, white nationalist agenda and called Boris Johnson an entitled Bullingdon Club brat. Yes, to some extent, absolutely. I'd agree with that criticism. And absolutely, he is an entitled Bullingdon Club brat. Absolutely. The group has continued to receive taxpayer money through local councils. The trust might not self-evidently be biased to you or I, but in the eyes of the law, it is not. Yeah, because charities are allowed to do that. If a charity cannot criticize a government, then what? This is really like, and you notice, by the way, how this has turned from this was meant to be big criticisms of the BBC being really left wing and biased. It's now turned to uh, complaining about charities and about how they're speaking about out against the current Conservative government. How dare they? Grr, those pesky charities. I don't know where this is going. I don't know where this is going. Where are we? So even international organizations are hostile to the Conservatives. Oh no! Oh no! 2 weeks ago, Britain was downgraded by the pithily named Civis Monitor in their Civic Freedoms Index of the government's scrutiny of the government scrutiny of activist charities. And according to the group's website, the monitor is a collaboration between more than 20 civil organizations around the world, providing an annual update of the global relative health of civil society. Britain was downgraded from narrowed to obstructed, placing us all in the same bracket as South Africa and Botswana. Well, why did they do that? And bear in mind, Civic Freedoms Index, and the government have actively scrutinized activist quote. I don't think they are activist charities. I think they're just charities. I think you're trying to put the word activist before them to make them seem a lot more sinister, to be honest. But there you go. So, airdropping ideological allies into hostile environments achieves little without the additional heft of a high profile popular campaign to reclaim an institution or a legislative slick by which to ram through root and branch reforms. The Conservative Party does not does not provoke the culture war. It responds to it. Oh my word. The I just want to remind you this person has written just now that the Conservative Party does not provoke culture wars, it responds to them. Remind me what Lee Anderson, the deputy chair of the Conservative Party, the man pretty much responsible for campaigning not only at the next local elections, but the next general election as well. Remind me what he said very recently, that they cannot run on their record from the past 10 years because it's absolutely abysmal. They're going to have to run on culture war issues. This, oh my word. This article is so insane. This article is so insane, and the thing is, we're not even to the worst part yet. We're not even to the worst part yet of what she recommends happens to the BBC. Most of this, remember, this is meant to be an article about the BBC. Yet halfway through, she started complaining about charities and the position that they take. How dare charities criticize the government? Taking a bit of a wild turn, this article. So the Conservative Party does not provoke the culture war, it responds to it. But incredibly poorly, and impartiality has always been a useful tool to maintain balance in the past. But as the culture war becomes increasingly heated, it may no longer be enough. I refer to Robert Conquest's second law. Any organization not explicitly and constitutionally right wing will sooner or later become left wing? What? What? I have never heard of that. Is that a thing? I have never heard of this before. What is this? Robert Conquest's second law. What on earth is this? Gotta find this. I'm sorry, I've got to find this. Oh, it is. It seems to be a real thing. That's very strange. Again, never heard of that before, but yeah, wow, that's that's strange. That's really strange, that for sure. Oh, so anyway, let's finish this off then. So the Conservative Party is not wrong to try and regain some semblance of representation. But tactics matter. Carelessness will only embolden those who seek to remove right leading figures from public life entirely. Uh, the Conservatives, just a couple of weeks ago, spent an entire week trying to get rid of Gary Lineker for criticizing them. How is that fine? How is that fine? And then here comes the worst part of this article. So, emboldened by the prospect of a long Labour regime, disgruntled ideologues are likely to hold their tongues in the name of fairness and balance. What? So, apparently, people who are ideologues, because of it's going to be a Labour government, they're not going to criticize the government. Um, that's so strange. Like, why? Why would they keep quiet? Like they've got no reason to keep quiet. If they're left wing and they want to affect change, why would they keep quiet just because the Labour government's in charge? I, this is just such a stupid article. It really is. Um, the BBC, with large swathes of the third sector, are reliant on public funding, and many of the initiatives pushed by left-leaning employees are incredibly unpopular. Again, please cite your sources by that. I'd love to see that these incentives that are pushed. What incentive? Again, you spent an entire article meant to be talking about the BBC and its supposed impartiality, yet you spent more than a good chunk of it talking about charities. Maybe you should have been talking about some of those incentives that have been pushed by left-leaning employees that are supposedly incredibly unpopular. Do you have an example of those? So the government should. The government shouldn't engage in any underhanded tactics used by the left. It should instead wield their popular mandate for legislative reform before they lose their chance. And at that point, that this person is now advocating to turn the BBC into a state-funded version of Fox News for the Conservative Party. Why? Because this person, as Prentice said, it's going to be a long Labour government, meaning we're going to be out of power for some time. Yeah, exactly, Duke Vengeance. The underhanded tactics of the left. What underhanded tactics? You mean criticizing the government, writing letters to MP criticizing their policy, and then having those Conservative MPs turn around and try and defund charities? Or at least stop them from receiving public money? What was this article? I just was what was this article? Anyway, we're gonna read the comments because the comments are always very good. So the important point about the title is the distinction between synonyms and causes. Lineker isn't the issue. It's the fact that he thinks he's making a rational contribution to debate. Like so many people of importance, there is a need to look at the whole, not just one vicious buffoon. It is worth saying his program is equally vacuous. There was a professor at Cambridge who, at the height of vaccine production, of the production race, said that she hoped desperately that Britain didn't invent the first because it would make us proud. Or train unions trying to turn down pay offers because they enthusiastically point out that their constitution is the destruction of capitalism. There are TV news programs will all sort of claim all this stuff. suffering from Tory, claiming that they are suffering from a Tory government policy without any attempt by the programme to make checks of the facts. During the pandemic, there was any attempt to check if the nurses complaining about their hospitals. Yeah. Again, interesting. Oh dear. GB News may not be perfect, but for me, it's the heart. Its heart is in the right place. Oh dear. Oh dear. But yeah, this is just so weird. Yeah, exactly. Mock the Weak would always mock Labour when they're in power. And it wasn't just Mock the Weak, it was have I got news for you as well? It's just what was this article? I'm interested now. Poppy Colburn. There we are. Poppy Colburn. Yeah, the government needs to stop funding charities blocking its program. No wonder she was so against charities there. If that would be a good one. If the government can't build homes for young people, it should police our borders properly. What? What? Oh, I have. Oh, let's have a look at the Twitter. I'm gonna have a look at Twitter. Oh no. She's got a protected Twitter page, so only approved people can see a Twitter page. I wonder why. I wonder what she's tweeting about. I wonder what she's tweeting about. Oh, but yeah, wow. And that lasted a bit longer than I. Oh no, it's not. Sorry, we've only been going for. Yeah, we'll continue. We'll continue on till 8 o'clock. We'll finish off the rest of the stuff we got. Like I say, up next we've got this wonderful video to show you quickly. Going to the next. 2. Hang on. There we go. There we go. So this is a bit. I just briefly want to try and show you this. This is a good sort of segue. Actually, into the article that we're going into next. And I think it also disproves what Raphael Barr is actually making, or at least trying to say, that there's going to be a minority, potentially coalition government in the next parliament. That's what he's saying. The next general election is going to result in a coalition government because it is all going to be these heroes of the Red Wall who are going to somehow save Rishi Sunak. Bear in mind, this is prime conservative country, and indeed might not be a red wall, but it's certainly very close to a couple of those red wall seats. So, yeah, this is interesting. And remember, this is the core conservative voting bloc. I want to remind you.
Lancashire in the northwest of England.
Calling at Preston, Lancaster.
And on to Pendle, a parliamentary constituency which has long voted Conservative. But there are people here that now have problems with their party.
We have watched an absolute rabble, yeah, with no discipline, charging around, thumb up bum and brainy neutral.
I think it could do with a good shake-up.
The last few years has just blown it out of the water for me.
From the cost
Imagine what you just heard there. Those people, and these people in this video, are the exact Tory demographic that they're after in the next general election. And they are saying specifically, we do not like our party. Now, remember, there is, as we've said before, when we look at these by-elections that have happened, even the previous last year's May local elections, there was this missing 10% that the Conservatives got towards to win their big their big 2019 general election. So in desperation, they have elected Lee Anderson as a deputy party chairman in order to try and get these people. Remember, that's why they put in Lee Anderson. It wasn't no accident. They didn't just accidentally, stumble into Lee Anderson because it was, oh, well, the first person to come through the door gets the deputy party chairman job. The deputy party chairman job is a very important job. So he wasn't chosen at random. He was chosen for a very specific reason. He was chosen because they are somehow convinced that Lee Anderson can energize these people to get out and vote Conservative. Because remember, there's that missing 10%. And yeah, as one angry pagan points out as well, we've talked about this as well. Farmers massively turning against the Tories. In fact, probably in a couple of months' time, we've got the big rebellion that George Eustace is meant to be leading against the Canadian and Mexico trade deals. Because it's very likely they are going to shaft farmers again, just like they did in the Australia and New Zealand trade deals. So, honestly, I have said this before. I think if Labour plays the next general election too safe, and I mean plays it really too safe, I think we'll end up with a coalition government. But it won't be the Tories in it. It will probably be a coalition, probably of like the Lib Dems and Labour. Ultimately, I can probably potentially see that happening. I think that's potentially what will happen. More than likely, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But like I say, we'll see what happens when the general election comes down. We'll see what happens, what's in the Labour manifesto. But to be honest, I think Labour are making some good sounds. I think the New Deal for Workers is pretty good. I think the energy policy they've got pretty good. Rachel Reeves is going to be probably the greenest chancellor we've had ever in the UK. Ed Miliband's going to be pretty good as well on business. He's done a lot of stuff about wanting to expand powers for, for unions and all that stuff. So there's even the constitutional reform that Gordon Brown has put forward to sort of reform the House of Lords. I think if that goes through to change the House of Lords to an actual elected body under PR, that will be very big. There's a ton of stuff to be generally quite excited about on the Labour policy front. They just need to start selling these policies more. And also, I really, really think they need to do something about housing. I think that it's a massive missing point that they are not talking about housing. Protecting healthcare is paramount importance. Yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens when they come to the NHS, because they haven't really talked too much about the NHS, except they're going to fund the NHS. We'll see. Yeah, exactly. Farmers will drive their tractors around Westminster a few times, toot their horns, and then go back in home time for dinner. Farmers in the UK are a joke. Yeah. That's the unfortunate case. I mean, if this was France and the farmers were revolting, they would bring France to an absolute standstill. And bear in mind, you're seeing the unrest at the moment, and all Emmanuel Macron has really done is raise the state pension age by 2 years. The Tories have raised state pension age, I think, over the past decades 3 or 4 times. Nothing. Absolutely nothing from the British public. Massive difference, and I've said this before. I wish the British public were at least like a 10% as politically active and as politically turned on as they are in France. But yeah, well, yeah. I just wish the British public was more active, because we wouldn't have we wouldn't have had Brexit, we wouldn't have the Tories. UKIP would have never have stood a chance, because they would never have got elected to the European Parliament in the first place. So much stuff would have been so much better. But hey, there you go. Anyway, let's finish this off.
Of living.
Economically, we're in a bit of a turmoil time.
We need more investment. I'll ask for more investment up in the north.
To illegal immigration.
There are all these people put up in hotels, which is, I believe, is 6 million a day. They're not migrants. It's an invasion force.
And
oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
The health service.
I think the main thing is the NHS, to be quite honest.
Almost 250 miles south in Westminster.
Oh yes, and of course the liaison committee. The very first time Rishi Sunak has had to face the liaison committee. Those of you that don't know, very regularly the UK Prime Minister has to go before, well, the liaison committee, and the liaison committee is a group of different, basically, I think chosen at random MPs. I don't think it's set. But essentially, they get to question the Prime Minister on his performance and how he's been doing and all kinds of stuff. So that happened quite recently as well. Rishi Sunak did not do well, though. All in honesty, he got absolutely bodied in the liaison committee. If you've seen any of the outtakes of this, we're going to see one now, I think, from this.
This is the first session we have with the Prime Minister of 2023.
The PM today grilled on those subjects, intent on telling MPs and voters he's heard them and is trying to get on with the job. On the economy.
We are on track with all of those. OBR forecast inflation to be more than halved by the end of the year.
And on the NHS.
All our commitments to cut waiting lists is absolutely paramount and protected. But it was right that we
getting on with it, but his plan to stop illegal boat crossings, undoubtedly the hardest and most controversial of policy areas to crack.
Use of the word invasion to describe the small boats problem.
I think, look, it's very clear that the scale of the problem is significant and growing.
Defending the language and the provisions of his new immigration bill too, with no detention exemption for children who make illegal crossings.
I don't think we want to create a pull factor to make it more likely that children are being making this very perilous journey in conditions that are appalling. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
But it's the people and the voters here in Pendle that will be the judge of what's right. The first test.
And this is interesting. This is very interesting. Listen to what I think it's this woman that says it. Listen to what she's about to say.
The local elections in May.
Do you think they'll lose control of the council? You do.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
you do.
Beth Rigby, Sky News in Pendle.
God, I wish they'd done more. I would love to have seen more of that full interview with those three group of people, because I think that interview must be fascinating to see in its full glory. But anyway, as we said, on to talking about the general election. because very, very soon, you know, I've said it to the bell. If you're part of the Pony Club today, or if you're part of the Patreon, I've done a new members video talking all about sort of what I think the chances of a general election potentially happening this year are. I've sort of laid it out why I think that's been the case, why I've had to sort of reevaluate the whole electoral calculus because of, well, Boris Johnson potentially losing a lot of power. I think now you're going to see a lot of people talk more and more about potential general elections. What might happen? What might be the possible outcome? And interestingly enough, the very first article about the general election potentially, maybe this year, maybe next year, the first article talking about a possible result isn't what we can see may potentially happen in the polls, because the polls, again, aren't very good for the Conservatives. But ultimately, this has pointed very, very clearly to, at least according to Raphael Barr, he thinks we are going to get coalition government. We're going to get a hung parliament. That's what he thinks. Now, okay, fine, fair enough. That is a possibility. But I've said that really, really depends on what happens with Labour. Like I say, this next general election, not going to lie, it's Labour's to lose. They have everything into play. The Conservatives have a weak leader, a completely divided party, and they have so much ammunition they can fire in their reserves. It's unbelievable. But that is the state of play at the moment for the Labour Party. They have to be brave, they have to be bold, and to be honest, if they do that, this upcoming general election, I think, would be an absolute cakewalk. But they've got to be bold, and they've got to be brave. More importantly, they've really, really got to sort their messaging out. They have a good message. Easy. But like I say, we'll see what happens when we come to the general election. So, on to this. So, because I think this is kind of interesting. Like I say, I'm sort of very sort of interested to sort of talk about it. So, the title of this article is "Red Wall Brexiteers will be the hero voters of the next election. The rest of us are just walk-on players." So, whatever happens in the next general election, Britain will be governed by some kind of coalition. This can be said with confidence because all governments are coalitions of some kind, even when there is only one ruling party. Again, very true. I've talked before about how Labour is very much a big tent party. Even the Conservatives are very much in themselves a coalition of people on the right. That's how politics works out. But I think really he's talking about there will be a coalition. I think if we do go to coalition, I think it will be Labour Lib Dem. I think so. If he is sort of in that ballpark area, I really think it will be that. But anyway, like I say, we'll see what happens when a general election comes. Maybe Raphael Barr will be completely 100% right. Maybe it will be a coalition. So there are Conservatives who see Rishi Sunak as their rightful leader and others who submit to his authority without enthusiasm. Yep, exactly. And to be honest, I would say that's most of the party. I think that's most of the party, to be honest. The factions must be balanced in the cabinet. The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is a Sunakian. The Home Secretary Suella Braverman, a rival leadership candidate for the party of perpetual Brexit. The current Tory chair, Greg Hands, is indigenous to pre-referendum conservatism. An urbane former Remainer who served as George Osborne's treasury, and his deputy Lee Anderson is the fire-breathing anti-woke culture warrior who defected the Tories from Labour back in 2018. So, again, talking about balance, and this isn't new. When we've talked about this balance that sort of exists in the Conservative Party, and the thing is, Johnson got that right. Johnson got that balance perfectly. Oh, Kuthonic, hello to you. Oh, Tom Nelson, hello, good to you as well. Stanley Beckett, good to you as well. Hello to you as well. Hello to anyone else. Jem as well. I've just seen you as well in the chat as well, so hello to you. Like I say, welcome. Come on in. Sunakian sounds like some sort of Lovecraftian dreamland. Possibly. So Boris Johnson, we always talked, if you remember during the Boris years, we always talked about the tightrope that Johnson was walking, that he had one party on one side and one part of the party on the other side, and he was trying to sort of balance walking along the tightrope, trying to balance these two factions, making sure that they weren't going to butt heads. But as we always said, if he starts to appeal to one side too much, he starts to lose the other. And if he starts to appeal back to them, well, now he starts the tipping act once again, and it's that perpetually trying to maintain that perfect balance. I'm not sure Rishi Sunak can maintain that balance, because we've just seen what is a constant feature of Rishi Sunak's entire premiership: rebellions after rebellions after rebellions. And remember, we've had rebellions about rebellions. So his entire party trying to keep this balancing act going, at least under the Johnson formula, it's not sustainable. He cannot sustain it. He will lose one side or the other. And I think, given the fact that you've had Johnson perform the way he did, and you had Liz Truss as well, the fact that they are still very, very much behind in the polls, Rishi Sunak releasing those tax returns did not do him any favors. Because you've got the Prime Minister, who's a multi-millionaire, only paying 20% tax, while Keir Starmer, who earns significantly less than Rishi Sunak, pays a 40% tax rate hike. A perfect microcosm of what is wrong with certainly the tax system in the country. That's definitely for sure. Where were we? So that is coalition politics. It is also describes Downing Street's strategy, so we say, for retaining some of the majority won in 2019. That means defending the Red Wall, the former Labour seats in Northern England and the Midlands. I still want to point out, we're still calling them the Red Wall. Even after 2019, those Red Wall seats are still being referred to as Red Wall seats. That says everything you need to know about them, to be honest. So these former Labour seats in Northern England and the Midlands that were craving for Brexit, that was a gateway drug into voting for Boris Johnson. But it also means wooing back moderate Tories who have recoiled from Johnson's circus and the disrepute and Liz Truss's pyrotechnic economic mismanagement. And as we said before, this balancing act, which Johnson managed to get right in 2019, he can't maintain it. He just can't maintain it at all. And Stanley, Labour is no longer a big tent party. The left have been purged, so why bother to vote? Wrong. The left has not been purged. I'm sorry, Stanley, but that's not true. The left has not been purged. There is so much good stuff. Just look up the Labour New Deal for workers, which is going to end 0-hour contracts, end fire and rehire, give unions more power. You're telling me that the left has been purged, yet we've got that as a Labour policy? And here's the thing. You should go out and vote, because what's better? If this is as true as you say, do you want Conservatives to win, who are certainly going to be an ever more increasing right-wing party, or the Labour Party. Because I'll tell you now, my vote would go to Labour all the time, even if it was true that the left had been purged from the party. So anyway, that's my little thing. But yeah, Stanley, I'm sorry, I disagree with that completely and utterly on that statement. Absolutely 100%. Where are we? So the plan is that one side of the Tory party wins back the economic trust with a prolonged display of competence, while the other side slams the door in migrants' faces to prove it is still the nemesis of the European judges and their metropolitan liberal accomplices. And the thing is, that cannot be maintained. Like, you cannot maintain that. You again, Raphael's saying that that's the plan, and that is the plan, but that is not something that you can maintain, because the more they do that to one side, the more it's just going to seesaw back and forth like that, and they will just turn off each other. This coalition that Boris Johnson built has been well and truly fractured and broken to pieces. It's no longer there, and without him at the helm, it can't even manage it. And to be honest, it was broken even during under Johnson. Like I say, it was Partygate that started the fracture and then the smashing of it completely. So the two elements must be then combined in an image of a strong, dependable leader. And Sunak is more popular than his party, and in a presidential race against Keir Starmer, he would certainly be competitive. The opposition's leader's allies concede that he has work to do with many voters who are currently window shopping for an alternative government and needs to be lured through the Labour's door. But there isn't much evidence yet that the incumbent Prime Minister's personality is sturdy enough to hoist MPs out of danger in all the seats where the Conservatives' brand is toxic. That's very true. And we've seen the polls. What you want to look at one shocking poll, look at what was titled the Red Wave poll, where Labour would completely take all the Conservatives' coastal seats. Like, the Conservatives would just lose all their coastal seats. You know, that's it. It's out there. All these polls there, but as I say, polls are a very good indicator. But sometimes, when it comes to a general election, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what things might suddenly be in play. You never know what might suddenly become a big sort of issue. Again, Theresa May in 2017 meant to be the big Brexit election. Turned out not to be. Turned out to be about pensioners and in heating allowances. That was the big issue in the 2017, and that lost her the complete, Tory majority that she had. So general elections can be a strange beast sometimes, and you never know what type of general election you're going to get until it pops up. It's just that the parties have to be prepared to adapt to when that happens. And Theresa May did not adapt at all to that whatsoever. What's this? Colin Thompson, Politico reporting today Britain secures agreement to join the Indo-Pacific trade bloc. Just FYI, I'll probably have a look at that tomorrow. So where are we? So there are nationally scores of seats in play at the next election. Very pressing a potential seismic shift in the political landscape. Both of the main English parties have their sights on a narrow slice of the population. Deborah Mitterson, Starmer's Director of Strategy, calls them hero voters. The one who swings directly from Tory to Labour, effectively having double the impact of anyone who moves from a third party. The profile of these voters is a Brexit-supporting, older but not retired, economically precarious, socially conservative, white, not in big cities, but with higher education. Okay, fair enough. That's, a typical voter strategy. Deborah Matteson, though, I'd be very, very careful of Deborah Bratz. So this is one of the people that actually worries me. She wrote a book not too long after the 2019 general election, I think called The Red Wall Voters, and she had a very, very methodology that of like what was a red wall seat and what was and what wasn't. Her focus groups that she did and she talked about were very strangely done as well, so it was strangely put together. One was a group of her friends. That doesn't seem like a focus group to me. But again, like I say, I am very worried that she is the director of strategy, to be honest, about all this. One of the things that worries me about the next general election, one of the things that certainly does worry me about that. So, yeah. So the anxieties and prejudices of those people exert a magnetic pull on the national debate to the exclusion of other voters. Very true. That is a big disadvantage of our current voting system as well. An election fought over the allegiance of red wall Brexiteers is anyway a fixture for Starmer, whose Remain voting Liberal lawyer CV is no secret. But the electoral system does give the Labour leader an advantage too. He would prefer to win a majority, but the door to number 10 creaks open for him as soon as the Tories lose theirs, since no other party will prop up a minority and a Sunak-led administration. The Liberal Democrats have already signalled that they are in the business of replacing the Tories. Their leader, Ed Davey, hasn't broadcast instructions to his members to vote hasn't broadcast intentions to his members to vote tactically in places where Labour candidate is in better place to unseat the Conservative incumbent. But the message is implicit in the choice of constituencies being targeted and the tone of the campaign rhetoric. And this is it. We saw this in 2019 about tactical voting. The thing was, everyone and a lot of people were convinced that, oh yes, this is a tactical voting seat. This is what we need to do. But there was no big grand plan. And unless one of these parties, like the Lib Dems, actually properly commits to tactical voting, it could be a bit of a mess. Like I say, it was certainly a mess in 2019. So Starmer may not be a president-elect, but Britain has a parliamentary system, and he is a de facto leader of the GTTO coalition, Get the Tories Out. That can be a powerful alliance, although also a fragile one. It was fractured for many years by the Lib Dems' decision to form an actual coalition with the Conservatives in 2010, and it fell apart completely in 2019 because too many swing voters decided that the prospect of a Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister was the most repellent one on the ballot paper. Again, as we've said before, that was an actual thing that a lot of people on the left seem to still cannot come to terms with. That when people went into the ballot box, a lot of people just did not want Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister. That is something that a lot of people, even Jeremy Corbyn supporters, cannot seem to wrap their head around. And unless they can actually fix and solve that problem, if they were ever to achieve another sort of Corbyn-like figure in the future, any lessons that they have failed to learn from the Corbyn years will ultimately come back to haunt them. So we can only hope, but so far they certainly do not seem to have learned any lessons from the Corbyn years. So Starmer has worked hard to repair the damage done by his predecessor, to the point of forbidding him from running as a Labour candidate. This has disoriented the Corbynite left, which now faces an interesting choice. Loyalty to the exiled independent MP for Islington North means a formal rupture from Labour and a future of paddling in the stagnant waters of Marxist protest politics, rowing in behind Starmer, although be it with a much grumbling about the principles betrayed. This offers a slipstream to future influence over a party in power, and it's clear where the left's interests lie, and it isn't martyrdom to the lost Corbyn cause, which I have said multiple times before. You've got to keep on looking forward. You cannot look back and decide to fight old battles. If you keep on doing this, if you decide to keep on fighting old battles again and again and again, you are not in a position to fight the battle that is in front of you. And that is the exact same mistake that many people on the left in the UK continuously make. Yes, you may not like Keir Starmer, but if you're in the Labour Party, if you are a member and you are affecting politics, you are electing progressive MPs, and you are having progressive policies. Look at how successful the Labour for PR campaign has been. And yet we are constantly told by people on the left that it's pointless trying to affect Labour policy, that it's pointless being a member of the Labour Party. And yet look how successful Labour for PR have been. So that also means that even if Starmer wins a majority, he will too find himself governing a coalition. Old divisions are buried, but not deep. They will then be disinherited by the hard choices that any government has to make. The discipline line Labour is currently holding exposes the appetite for victory worked up after a steady diet of defeats. While patience is installed by opinion poll leads, these factors will not pertain once a Labour Chancellor is rationing the funding to cash-starved public services and a Labour Home Secretary is grappling with the Kentish border control. Ask Labour MPs about how they feel about the prospect, and they will say, would gladly take the problems over the government, over the grind of opposition. Also, they are not complacent about the mountain to climb after a crushing defeat in 2019 is so steep, and they are right. The road to Downing Street is narrow, and it goes by way of persuading Tory voters to switch sides. But it is a disappearing prospect for those of us who happen to not live along that route. We, the unheroic second-class voters whose ballots will be made imprecise tactical calculations cast on a heap of already safe seats. Again, that is a call for PR. I've said this before. We should absolutely go for PR. PR should be a change we should be making. And if you want PR, you have to campaign for it. You absolutely have to campaign for it. And that means being in the Labour Party, supporting Labour for PR. There is a big movement for PR as well. So this should be something we should be going along for. So this is not a new foible for British democracy. For as long as elections have been settled by first past the post system, millions of voters have had their preferences marginalised. But the imbalance feels especially perverse when politics has been polarised by a range of issues and the veto-wielding trench of the electorate is clustered on one side of the partisan divide. If these super voters were swinging on a left-right axis or a leave-remain one, the battle for their allegiance might be a meaningful microcosm of the nationwide competition, but they aren't. So British politics must be bent out of shape to make some opinions more prominent and fold others out of sight. The idea of leaving the EU was a mistake, for example, or that migration is good for the economy, or that mass indefinite detention of asylum seekers is not practical for civilized democracies. Those views are widely held, but they are not visible on a campaign trail mapped by Labour and Tory strategists. Anyone who believes such heresies must simply wait and see for what kind of coalition we get next. So I do think this is very much a call from Raphael Burr, certainly to say he thinks we're going to get a coalition government, that he thinks we are absolutely not a majority Labour one, that we are actually going to get a coalition. Now, I think that entirely depends on the campaign strategy. And I too, as he brought up the worries about what they are looking at, I think that's worrying as well. I think that's very worrying. And I've said it time and time again. If Labour are not bold and brave in what they do during the campaign, this is their election to lose. And I don't think they will lose. I think they will end up probably leading a coalition, and it will probably be with the Lib Dems. So we'll have to see. Chthonic, a coalition can still pass PR. Yes, a coalition can pass PR. That is very true. I do not know if it will pass, if this becomes a need, because when you enter a coalition, you know, as the Lib Dems did back in 2010, they said, look, we want a change to the voting system. Now they could ask for that again. They could. That is a very valuable. That is an ask. I think that is something Starmer might go for. So it will be good. That's for certain. But I think what sort of Raphael Burr is also indicating as well, that again, because of our voting system, sometimes because some seats are more valuable than others, especially when it comes to the swing seats. Sometimes if there's more right wingers in that seat, well, then the party has to pander a bit to the right wing in order to win. That's the truth, unfortunately. Like it or not, that is the problem with our voting system. And I think Raphael Burr gets that, again, very right across his article. I think he's absolutely right on that fact as well. And it's something I've said before on this channel many, many times. Changing our voting system should be a big priority. Now, I am prepared, as I've said before, if Starmer doesn't want to change the Westminster voting system, but as he's indicated, he wants to change the House of Lords to a House of like regional representatives, and that gets voted in by PR. I've said before, the PR campaign should shift from not like getting rid of like the changing the Westminster voting system, but should change to supporting that and go, you know, hell for leather of campaigning for that, because that will be a big sea change if we can affect that change. Big. But Starmer has to have the backing and the will to be able to do it. So we'll see. Like I say, general elections can be odd and bizarre beasts, as we've seen in the past. Like I say, I always make reference to sort of the 2017 one. That obviously being the most recent. But then there was the John Major one in 93, I think it was. Everyone thought that Neil Kinnock, I believe it was going to win. They had a bizarre general election that the polls were saying that it was going to be Labour. They might be a minority government, but they would have won. They didn't. General elections can sometimes end up like that. That's how it happens. Again, yeah, I agree with you, Mithril. Yeah, more young people. Exactly. Young people need to get out and vote. And this is something that needs to be instilled in a lot of young people. You know, you need to get out and vote. You know? But again, I think that's a big change for the voting system as well. The other thing I think they should definitely change, if we are going to be maintained with first past the post, then the other thing I think would be changes. If you're not going to actual change the voting system, make make changes to how the vote is done. So rather than we all vote on a Thursday, vote on a Friday instead. We should all vote on a Friday. That Friday should be a national holiday so that everyone gets the day off so it can all go and vote. I think that would be fantastic. That would be a big change. Everyone's got a national day off. Everyone can go and vote. That will be good. I think that will be a positive change. Not, of course, as good as, changing the voting system from first past the post, but I think that would be a small step in the right direction. So, it would be a big improvement. And maybe not just have the voting just on a Friday. Maybe you have it, the Friday is sort of the national holiday, and then the voting goes into Saturday as well. So you've got 2 days. You've got 2 days to get out and go and vote. I think that should absolutely be a massive change that we should probably look at. I think, and that would be good. And hey, we get an extra bank holiday, I think everyone can sort of agree with that. So yeah. But yes, as always, thank you very much for joining me today on today's Wednesday Night Live. Like I say, I hope you've enjoyed what we've had for you today. We'll see you all on Saturday morning, although at the moment, I will not lie, the weather doesn't look very good. So it might be another indoor walk. Again, as we've always said, the Good Morning Walk is entirely weather dependent. It's not looking good, but hopefully we'll be able to get out and vote, not vote, get out for a walk. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, and we'll see which way the rain's going, which way the rain is falling. But as always, guys, thank you very much for coming along today. Like I say, thank you very much to sort of see we can see. So we've got Emerald Mar, David Walker, Cathonic, Peter, Catho G, Larry the Cat, Paul Martin. Like I say, just everyone who can see at the moment in the chat sort of window. Thank you very much for everyone coming along and joining us today. Thank you very much as always. And of course, we'll see you all hopefully on Saturday. We'll see again, weather depending. And if not, we've also got videos coming out this week as well. So make sure you check them out as well. And of course, please do remember to click on the like and share button before you leave. And of course, as always, have an absolutely fantastic evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll see you all on Saturday, hopefully out in the outdoors for a good morning walk. So until then, I'll see you all very soon.